Joining me now is CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane. Scott, thank you so much for joining us on this very busy week for you. I understand you recently talked to Republican Allison Esposito and incumbent Democrat Pat Ryan, who are battling it out to represent New York's 18th congressional district in the Hudson Valley. And I guess the big question is just how important is this race to control of Congress?
It's pivotal. It's a battleground race in what is, for control of the U.S. House, Dick, the battleground state. Both parties, Democrats' National Party, Republicans' national campaign officials, both say the balance of power goes through New York because of all those seats that are competitive after the lines were redrawn earlier this decade. In the New York 18th, in the Hudson Valley, talking about Dutchess, Orange, Ulster counties, it's Pat Ryan, a second-term Democrat, facing a tough challenge from a former NYPD employee, Allison Esposito. She ran for lieutenant governor in 2022. She's trying to oust Ryan now in the Hudson Valley. They're pressing a number of issues, but there's a more fundamental issue here. There's a belief from both parties. There's a half dozen races that are winnable for each party in New York, and with the majority so narrow, Dick, they really can win or lose control in New York alone. And it's not lost on either candidate as they prodigiously fundraise. It's a pretty expensive area for a lot of things, including for campaigns.
Absolutely, Scott. And, you know, as you just hinted at, the issues here, they're not cut and dried like the rest of the country because they're somewhat, these congressional districts can be blue. They can have Trump supporters. They could have Harris supporters. The key issues we've seen is crime, reproductive rights, and also the border. And I can tell you right now, we have some of that sound that when you spoke to them just recently. Let's listen to the two candidates right now.
Everybody is struggling because of this porous border. The administration putting Americans last is the problem. So if you're asking how I see myself aligned with Donald Trump, that's it. It's America first. It's my district first.
I've been, from day one in Congress, explicitly by name calling out President Biden, saying he hasn't done enough to secure the border. One of few Democrats to push on him to put in place an executive order to really restore order there.
And you can see right there, Scott, as you know, these are two candidates, but they're sort of pushing to the middle as best they can there. And the border is a very tough issue, is it not?
It is, and it plays out in the Hudson Valley the same way the migrant crisis has touched New York City. It touches the suburbs, too. The same way costs of housing are just brutal in New York. It's brutal in the Hudson Valley increasingly, too. It's such a difficult place to win. It's blue collar, it's working class, except where it isn't. It's got suburbanites, people who take the long Metro North train into the city each day. It's difficult to navigate, and it's purple.
And when you say purple, what about the overturning of Roe, questions about IVF? I know you put those questions to the candidates. What kind of responses were you getting?
Pat Ryan first won his seat just weeks after the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision overturning Roe. He did it by leveraging that issue and leaning into the issue of women's reproductive rights. He's trying to replicate that here, accusing Allison Esposito of being too hard-lined against women's reproductive rights. She pushes back, but you can almost feel the campaign ads being drafted as we speak. They're going to try to battle on that political front between now and November 5th. And I would just accept whatever credit you want to offer me for getting to go to the Hudson Valley at the prettiest time of year on a work assignment.
And yeah, and you know a little bit about the Hudson Valley, and you've been there and you've lived there, and you know, I think, the whole area, and incredibly an encyclopedic knowledge of all districts. So I'll just throw a few numbers out and see if you can. No, just kidding. We know you're covering everything, Scott. We really appreciate you coming on right now.
Thanks, Dick.
All right, 80 days until Election Day, November 5th. Watching for the October surprise. I'm Dick Brennan. Thank you for joining me.